I never thought a single sentence could change the way I saw my own family. But that day, standing in the doorway of my father's old study, my brother looked me in the eye and said, "The inheritance is mine. All of it. You don't deserve anything." His voice wasn't loud. He didn't need to shout. Sometimes quiet words cut the deepest. I remember my hands going cold, as if the room had suddenly lost all its warmth. The sunlight coming through the window touched the edges of the old wooden desk, the same desk our father used for 30 years. Everything felt too still, too silent. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, slow and steady, as if it refused to care about what was happening. I should have argued. I should have defended myself. But for a moment, I couldn't speak at all. I only watched my brother, the same boy who once held my hand when I was scared of the dark, the same young man who taught me how to ride a bike, the same person who used to share his dreams with me, now standing like a stranger with my father's will in his hand. A part of me waited for him to smile and say he was joking. Another part of me hoped he would take it back, soften his tone, or at least explain why he said those words. But he didn't. He just looked away, as if he didn't want to see the hurt on my face. I could feel something inside me crack, not loudly, but quietly, like an old wooden door giving way after years of pressure. Something that had been holding our family together slipped out of place that day. I walked out of the study because I didn't trust my voice to stay steady. And as I closed the door behind me, I felt a deep, heavy sadness that followed me down the hallway, into the living room, and eventually into my own heart. That was the moment I realized something I had tried to ignore for years. Family doesn't break in one big explosion. It breaks slowly, in whispers, in silences, in small decisions made behind closed doors. And that day, when my brother claimed the inheritance as his alone, I understood that our story had reached a turning point, one I never saw coming. Before everything fell apart, our family looked ordinary from the outside. We were not perfect, but we had enough love to cover our flaws. Or at least that's what I believed. My brother, Daniel, was 2 years older than me. Growing up, he was the calm one, the steady one, the person everyone trusted without hesitation. I admired him for that. Even as kids, he had a way of making me feel safe. Whenever we walked home from school, he walked on the side closest to the road. When I cried because another child made fun of me, he stood beside me until I stopped. When our parents argued, he sat next to me in silence, offering nothing but presence. Something I learned later was more powerful than words. Our father, James, was a quiet man with gentle eyes. He wasn't expressive, but he had a strong presence. He worked at a small hardware store for decades and believed in discipline, honesty, and saving for the future. He talked very little, but he loved deeply in his own way. I still remember him fixing things around the house, humming softly under his breath. It was his way of keeping the home alive. Our mother, Evelyn, was the emotional heart of the house. She was warm, thoughtful, and always trying to fix everyone's problems, even the ones she didn't fully understand. She used to say, "Family matters more than anything else," and she lived by it. She tried to teach us the value of staying close, of supporting each other, of not letting small things turn into lifelong wounds. I believed her. Daniel did too, or at least that's what I thought. We were never rich. We didn't have the kind of wealth families fight over. But we had a house, some savings, and a piece of land our grandparents left behind. To us, these things weren't just property, they were memories. They were pieces of our childhood, pieces of our parents' lives, pieces of the family history that shaped us. When Mom passed away, everything changed in quiet ways. She had been the glue, the bridge, the soft voice reminding us to be gentle with each other. After she was gone, our father became even quieter. The house felt emptier, the dinners were shorter, and Daniel, he changed too, though I didn't recognize it at first. He grew distant, not cold, not rude, just distant, like someone quietly drifting away without meaning to. He took more responsibilities, handled the paperwork, made decisions about the house, and helped Dad with finances. I didn't think of it as control back then. I thought he was trying to help. Maybe he was. Maybe I misunderstood. Or maybe he had been preparing himself for a role he believed he deserved. I didn't know the truth at the time. When Dad got sick, the cracks became more visible. Hospital visits became routine. Paperwork piled up. Bills needed to be paid. And then all of this, Daniel took charge of everything. Whenever I offered to help, he would say, "I've got it. You just focus on Dad." His voice was gentle, reassuring, and I didn't question him. I trusted him. Maybe too much. Looking back, I realize how blind trust can be a dangerous thing. In those last months, Dad tried to talk to us about the future, but Daniel always told him, "Don't worry about it right now, just rest." And Dad, too tired to argue, would close his eyes and drift back to sleep. Maybe Dad wanted to divide things fairly. Maybe he wanted to discuss his wishes. Maybe he wanted us to promise we would stay close. But the conversations never happened. One evening, when I was sitting next to Dad in the hospital room, he held my hand and whispered, "Take care of each other." Just that. No explanations, no instructions about the will, just a simple, fragile hope. I nodded. I promised. And I believed Daniel would honor those words just as much as I did. When Dad passed away, our house became a museum of memories. I walked through every room, touching the furniture, the curtains, the picture frames. Everything reminded me of the life we lost. That's when Daniel became even more serious. He handled the funeral arrangements, the documents, the bank accounts. He met with lawyers. He talked to the neighbors. He made phone calls. And I let him, because he was always the responsible one, because he had always taken charges, because I trusted that he was doing what Dad wanted. But I didn't know what papers he was signing. I didn't know which documents he was filing. I didn't know if he was acting out of duty or out of something else entirely. The day the will arrived, I wasn't even home. Daniel called me and said, "Come to the house. We need to talk." His tone was flat. I couldn't read him. I felt a small twist in my stomach. But I told myself it was just nerves. After all, dividing property is an emotional thing. I assumed we would sit down together, talk about each item, and make decisions like adults. I walked into the house expecting a discussion. Instead, I saw a folded yellow envelope on the old wooden desk in Dad's study. The same desk where he wrote grocery lists, paid bills, and jotted little notes for Mom. Daniel stood beside it, not looking at me. I asked gently, "What's in the envelope?" He didn't answer at first. He just kept staring at the desk. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded different, firmer, colder. He said, "I talked to the lawyer. Everything has been reviewed. The inheritance is mine." For a moment, I thought he was lying or joking or testing me for some reason I didn't understand. But then he lifted the envelope and added, "Dad wanted it this way." When Daniel first said the words, "The inheritance is mine," I didn't react. Not because I accepted it, but because my mind refused to believe what I had heard. I stood there in Dad's study, staring at my brother, waiting for something. A smile, a sigh, a softened tone, anything that could pull his words back and make them less real. But nothing came. The silence between us grew heavier, like thick fog filling the room. At last, I managed to whisper, "Daniel, what do you mean it's yours?" He didn't look at me. He placed the envelope back onto the desk with a slow, careful motion, as if it were a sacred object. "I mean what I said. Dad wanted everything to go to me, the house, the savings, the land." I blinked in confusion. The words sounded impossible. Dad had never shown favoritism. He had always been fair, balanced, thoughtful. Even at his strictest, he treated us equally. So how could he suddenly leave everything to one child? "Dad would never do that," I said softly. It wasn't an accusation, just a quiet truth I believed with all my heart. Daniel finally turned toward me. His eyes were tired, distant, almost bruised by sleepless nights. Yet there was something else inside them, a hardness I had never seen before. "You weren't here like I was," he said. "You didn't take care of him like I did. You didn't handle things. You didn't deal with the stress. I did." His voice didn't rise, but the words still carried a sharp edge. I took a deep breath. "I was here, Daniel. Maybe not as much as you, but I was here. I stayed with him. I talked to him. I helped when I could." "When you could," Daniel repeated, emphasizing each word. "Exactly, when you could. Not when it was needed, not when everything fell on me." The guilt he pushed toward me settled on my shoulders like a heavy coat. Was I there enough? Was I present enough? Had I left too much to him because he seemed stronger? I didn't know. Grief confuses everything, even memories. I stepped closer. "Daniel, this isn't about who did more. This is about what Dad wanted. And Dad would never choose one of us over the other. You know he wouldn't." A muscle in Daniel's jaw tightened. "Maybe you didn't know him as well as I did." The words hit me harder than they should have. I had spent years believing Daniel and I understood Dad in similar ways, even if Daniel was older. I never imagined he'd use those differences to push me away. I glanced at the envelope again. "Can I see the will?" I asked quietly. His hesitation lasted only a second, but it was enough to confirm my fear. He didn't want to show it to me. "There's nothing to see," he said. "It's straightforward." I stepped closer still. "Daniel, please, I deserve to read it." His tone hardened. "It's done. The lawyer confirmed it. I don't want to argue." "I'm not arguing," I said. "I just want to see the document." "I told you," he repeated. "There's nothing to see." His protectiveness over the envelope felt unnatural, almost defensive. I felt my breath grow unsteady. This wasn't the brother I knew. This wasn't the boy who once shared his allowance with me. This wasn't the young man who protected me from bad days and broken moments. Something had changed, or maybe something had been changing for years and I never noticed. I reached out, my hand hovering over the envelope. "Daniel, please." He stepped in front of the desk, blocking it with his body. "Stop." His voice wasn't loud, but it was final. A wall had appeared between us, a wall I didn't know how to climb. I lowered my hand. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. I didn't ask with anger. I asked with hurt, with heartbreak, with confusion. Daniel didn't answer right away. He walked toward the window and stared outside, arms crossed. The afternoon sun fell on his shoulders, but he still looked cold. After a long silence, he said, "Because I earned it." My heart sunk. "You earned our father's inheritance?" I repeated, barely able to process the words. He nodded slowly, still facing the window. "I was the responsible one. I stayed with Dad. I handled everything. You lived your life and I dealt with the rest. So, yes, I earned it." I felt my throat tighten. "You don't earn inheritance, Daniel. It's not a job. It's not a reward. It's our family." He turned abruptly. "Our family wasn't a balanced one. You were the free one, the emotional one, the one who could walk away from things. I was the one who stayed, the one who fixed everything, the one who sacrificed my time, my plans, my everything." I had never heard him speak like this, as if every unspoken resentment from the past decade had suddenly found a voice. I stepped back stunned. Was this how he had felt all this time? Was I blind to it? Did I miss signs? Did I fail him without knowing? I didn't know. Grief confuses everything, even memories. Finally, I whispered, "If you felt that way, why didn't you tell me?" Daniel looked at me with a bitter half smile. "I didn't think you'd listen." His voice wasn't angry. It was exhausted, worn, fragile in a way that made my heart twist. For the first time, I wondered if this was more than the will. Maybe this was about years of misunderstandings, years of silence, years of heaviness that neither of us talked about. And yet, even if he was hurt, even if he felt unappreciated, this wasn't the way to handle it. I swallowed hard. We could have worked through this together. But taking everything, Daniel, it isn't fair. His eyes hardened again. "Fairness is for people who share the work. I carried this family. I carried Dad, and now I'm carrying the consequences." I stared at him, trying to recognize the brother I loved. But his eyes were unfamiliar, like a stranger wearing a familiar face. I stepped closer and whispered, "Can we please sit and talk, without anger, without decisions, just talk like we used to?" Daniel sighed, as if the very suggestion tired him. "There's nothing to talk about," he said quietly. "It's already decided." "By who?" I asked softly. "You or Dad?" He froze, a stillness too sharp to ignore. That's when I knew the will didn't say what he claimed. He wasn't protecting Dad's wishes. He was protecting something else entirely. A decision he made, or a document he altered, or a truth he twisted to fit his resentment. I felt something inside me go cold. "Daniel, did you change something?" I whispered. He turned away. "I'm not doing this. I'm not having this conversation again." "Again?" I repeated. "What do you mean again?" He didn't answer. My mind raced. Had he met the lawyer alone? Had he signed something? Had he pressured Dad while Dad was too weak to think clearly? Or worse, had he used Dad's illness to his advantage? I didn't want to believe any of this. I didn't want Daniel to become the villain of my story. He was my brother, my family, my oldest friend. But his silence, his defensiveness, his refusal to show the will, it all pointed in one direction. Something wasn't right. I took a shaky breath. "I love you, Daniel," I said softly, voice cracking. "But I can't accept something that feels wrong. I can't accept this without the truth." He turned back toward me with tired, hollow eyes. "You don't get to question me," he said. "You didn't earn that right." I felt the words like a wound. He walked toward the door of the study, opened it, and stepped into the hallway. Before leaving, he said one last thing. "Don't make this harder than it already is." Then he walked away. And for the first time in my life, I realized I had lost him long before he ever said those words.
Daniel's footsteps faded down the hallway, but the echo of his final words stayed with me far longer. "You didn't earn that right." I stood in the middle of the study, feeling as if someone had pulled the floor out from beneath me. The room was quiet, painfully quiet, the kind of silence that makes your own heartbeat sound loud. Dust floated in the sunlight, drifting gently, as if it didn't notice the storm that had erupted between the two people who once shared this home. I walked to the desk slowly, almost afraid to get closer to the envelope. It sat there, plain, small, unthreatening, yet heavy with consequences. I didn't touch it, not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I was afraid of what the truth might do to what little was left between Daniel and me. After several moments, I stepped out of the study and followed the quiet hall toward the living room. Daniel wasn't there. His keys were gone. So was his jacket. He had left the house. I sank onto the old couch, the one Dad used to nap on, the one Mom had sewn cushions for. I pressed my hands over my face and tried to breathe through the ache building in my chest. It wasn't the inheritance that hurt me. It wasn't the property or the money or the assets. What broke me was Daniel's conviction that I was undeserving, as if our childhood meant nothing, as if our shared memories had faded for him long before Dad's last breath. After some time, the weight of everything became too much. I reached for my phone and dialed the only person I trusted enough to talk to, my friend Hannah. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, everything okay?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My throat tightened with emotion, and I had to swallow twice before words finally formed. "No, I don't think it is." Her voice softened. "What happened?" I took a slow breath and told her everything. Daniel's words, his defensiveness, his refusal to show the will, the strange tension that had been growing over the past year. Hannah listened without interrupting. She always knew when silence was needed. When I finished, she exhaled deeply. "That doesn't sound like your brother, not the Daniel I've known through your stories." "I know," I said, "but something's changed. He feels angry, like he's been carrying resentment I never knew about." "Do you think he's lying about the will?" she asked gently. I didn't answer right away. The question hurt because I used to believe Daniel was incapable of lying.
At least not about something this sacred. I don't know, I said finally, but something feels wrong. There was a pause. Then Hannah said, "Do you want me to come over?" "No," I whispered. "I think I need a little time alone." She understood. "Call me if you need anything at all." After ending the call, I leaned back on the couch and closed my eyes. Memories of Daniel rushed in. Him tying my shoelaces when I was too little to manage them. Him teaching me how to skip stones. Him staying up with me the night Mom died because he knew I was scared of being the only one awake. How does someone go from that to this? I spent the next hour walking through the house, touching things lightly, hoping they might bring comfort. But every doorway, every chair, every picture frame felt haunted by what had just happened. Eventually, I ended up in the backyard, the place where Dad used to grow tomatoes and roses. I stood there, digging my hands into the pockets of my coat, feeling the cool breeze against my face. I stared at the soil, remembering Dad's voice telling me, "Take care of each other." The simplicity of that request felt like a weight on my heart now. I wasn't sure we could honor it anymore. By late afternoon, Daniel still hadn't returned. The house grew darker. Shadows stretched across the floors, reaching into corners that had once felt warm and familiar. I turned on a few lamps, but the glow didn't chase away the heaviness in the air. I made tea, not because I wanted it, but because I needed something to do with my hands. The hot cup offered little comfort. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wood grain. Seconds felt long. Thoughts ran in circles. At last, I decided I couldn't just sit and wait. I needed answers. Not from Daniel, but from someone who wasn't emotionally tangled in the situation. So I grabbed my keys and drove to the lawyer's office. The law firm wasn't far, a simple brick building with a small sign near the door. I had met the lawyer, Mr. Collins, only once after Dad passed. He had seemed kind, patient, and straightforward. I stood in the lobby, hands trembling slightly, until the receptionist guided me to his office. Mr. Collins looked surprised to see me. "I wasn't expecting you today," he said gently. "Is everything all right?" I sat down and clasped my hands together. "I'm sorry for coming without an appointment. I need to ask you something." "Of course," he said. "Take your time." I inhaled deeply. Did my father leave everything to my brother? Mr. Collins' expression shifted. Not dramatically, but enough for me to notice. A slight tightening around his eyes, a small exhale before speaking. "Your father left a will outlining his wishes," he said carefully. I nodded. "And what did it say?" He folded his hands on the desk. "It would be best if your family reviewed it together." "I'm trying to, but my brother won't show it to me." Something sharp flickered in his eyes, a concern he didn't verbalize. "Did he tell you what it says?" "Yes," I said. "He told me Dad left everything to him, that Dad thought he deserved it." A long pause followed, so long that I felt my heart hammering inside my chest. Finally, Mr. Collins leaned forward slightly. I am not permitted to discuss the contents of the will without both of you present. My stomach dropped. But when morning came, I felt heavier than the night before. Sleep had not washed away anything. Instead, it left the questions sharper. What would happen now? What was the right thing to do? How does someone protect peace when the people meant to share it are tearing it apart? The house felt colder than usual. Maybe because it was quiet. Or maybe because my heart carried a weight I had never felt before. I stood in the kitchen, warming a cup of tea, staring at the steam as if it could tell me something. I kept hearing my mother's voice in my head. She had always believed that love was stronger than money, but life had shown me again and again that money has a way of revealing what kind of love was truly there. I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Anna, my wife. Her eyes were soft but tired. She didn't need to ask anything. She already knew I was still lost in last night's storm. I think, she whispered, you should talk to him again. A part of me wanted to. Another part felt completely done. But relationships, especially with siblings, aren't something you can walk away from easily, even when they hurt, even when they bruise. Something inside still wants to try. I don't know what to say, I whispered back. Start with honesty, not arguments, not proof, just how you feel. Her words sat in my chest, heavy but right. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said, I'll try. But before I could take a step toward that decision, my phone vibrated. A message from David. 2 simple words. Come outside. My heart tightened. I didn't know what he wanted to say, whether he had come to fight again or to talk, whether he felt regret or anger, whether he even cared about fixing anything at all. Still, I put on my shoes and stepped outside. He was standing near the gate, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. His eyes looked tired, maybe from the night, maybe from guilt, maybe from holding too many emotions inside. He couldn't sleep. Me neither, I replied. There was a long pause. The morning breeze passed between us like a curtain we did not know how to lift. I said too much, he murmured. I felt my chest soften, but I stayed silent. I wanted him to speak honestly, without fear of interruption. He swallowed, looking down at the ground. I don't know why I talked like that. I think I was afraid. Afraid of what? I asked gently. His voice cracked. Afraid that I wasn't enough in our mother's eyes. Afraid she didn't trust me. Afraid she only trusted you. That confession hit me like a quiet punch. In all my anger, I had never stopped to imagine his insecurity. I had never thought his harshness came from fear, not entitlement. He wiped his cheek quickly, trying to hide it. I shouldn't have said the inheritance was mine. I don't even know why I said that. I didn't want to feel small. David, I said softly, you're not small. You're my brother. After David left that morning, the house settled into a strange quiet. Not the painful kind anymore, but the kind that follows after a storm, when the air is still heavy, but calming slowly. I sat alone in the living room for a long time, staring at the framed photo of our mother on the wall. Her smile in that picture was soft and warm, a little tired but full of love. I wondered how she would feel about everything that had happened. Maybe she would be sad that her sons had clashed, but maybe she would also be proud that we chose to sit down and speak honestly instead of holding on to bitterness. I placed my hands on the frame. "We're trying, Mom," I whispered. "We'll get there." Later that afternoon, I met with Anna in the kitchen. She could always sense the mood of the house, almost like she could read the air itself. "You two talked," she said softly. "Yes," I replied. "And?" "It was better than I expected." She smiled a little. "He loves you, you know, even when he gets lost in his own fears." I nodded. "I know." But deep inside, I also knew something else. Conversations heal, but they don't fix everything overnight. There were still decisions to make, documents to handle, tensions that might return if we weren't careful. I needed to take the next step, not for control, not for ownership, but for clarity. So later that evening, I called David and said, "Come tomorrow. Let's meet with the legal advisor together." To my surprise, he didn't hesitate. "Okay," he said quietly. "Together." That word again, it brought a small warmth to my chest. The next day, facing reality. The next morning arrived with a pale gray sky, covered in soft clouds. It looked like rain might come, but it hadn't made up its mind yet. The weather felt strangely fitting. David arrived exactly on time, not late like he usually was, not rushed, just present. We drove together to the advisor's office. The car ride was quiet but not uncomfortable. He stared out the window, tapping his fingers on his knee. I stole a glance at him now and then, wondering what thoughts were moving through his mind. When we arrived, the advisor, Mr. Harris, greeted us gently. He was an older man with silver hair and glasses that slid down his nose whenever he talked. My mother had trusted him for years. He motioned for us to sit. "I understand your mother left a letter, but not a formal will." We both nodded. He folded his hands. "In that case, legally, both of you have equal claim. Nothing belongs to only one of you." David's shoulders tensed for a moment, but he remained silent. A few days ago, he might have reacted differently. Today, he simply listened. "But," Mr. Harris continued, "your mother's letter expresses her wishes, not enforceable but meaningful." He opened a file and read a few lines aloud. "I trust my sons to handle what I leave behind with love, not conflict. They will choose what is right, not just for themselves, but for each other." The room fell quiet. Those words cut deeper than anything the law could say. David lowered his head, staring at the floor. I felt something shift again, something that reminded me that responsibility wasn't about authority. It was about honoring the values we were given. Mr. Harris looked at us carefully. "You two must decide how to move forward. Together." We thanked him and stepped outside into the soft gray afternoon. The air smelled like rain now, thick and cool. David walked a few steps ahead, then stopped. "He didn't realize she trusted us that much," he whispered. "She always did," I replied. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "I don't want to be the reason her trust breaks." "You're not," I said gently. "We just lost our way for a moment." He exhaled shakily. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I gave him a small smile. "We're brothers. We don't give up." A difficult but honest conversation. We sat in the car for a while, neither of us starting the engine. The sky was getting darker. clouds gathering like thick blankets above us. David spoke first. "I have to tell you something," he said quietly. "Something I didn't say yesterday." I turned toward him, waiting. When I said the inheritance was mine alone, I wasn't only afraid. I was angry. At life, at responsibilities, at feeling like I was always behind you. His words were slow, heavy, but honest. He continued, "I felt like if I didn't take control of something, anything, then I would always be the weaker one, the one who followed instead of led." I nodded gently. "But you don't have to prove anything. Not to me, not to anyone." He shook his head. "I know that now. But that day, I didn't." I reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay," I said softly. "We all say things we regret." He took a deep breath. "I want to handle this whole process with you. Not for money, not for property, but because Mom wanted that. And because I want to rebuild us." A soft rain began tapping on the windshield, light at first, like gentle fingers. "I want that too," I said. For a few moments, we sat there watching the rain slowly blur the world outside the car. Then he said something that marked a deeper turning point than any apology or conversation so far. "I trust you," he whispered. The weight of those words settled in my chest like something sacred. "I trust you too," I replied quietly. Working together, slowly, carefully. Over the next few weeks, things didn't magically fix themselves, but they improved step by step. We began sorting through the property records, the old bills, the house responsibilities. The work was slow and sometimes emotional. Every paper carried a memory. Every corner of the house carried a part of our childhood. Sometimes David got frustrated. Sometimes I felt overwhelmed. But every time one of us stumbled, the other tried to steady things. There was no shouting, no accusations, just two brothers learning how to move together after years of drifting apart. He helped me clear out my mother's old belongings, not rushing it, not avoiding it, just being present. At one point, we opened an old box of letters she had written to herself. Private notes, reminders, short reflections. One of them said, "My sons are different, but their hearts are the same. They just need to see it." David read it quietly, his eyes filling with tears. He whispered, "She knew us better than we knew ourselves." I nodded, feeling my own throat tighten. She always did. That moment changed something deeply between us, not because the past disappeared, but because we finally understood it. Rain and realizations. One evening, after a long day of sorting through old documents, David and I stood outside under the porch roof. The rain was pouring hard, splashing on the driveway, running in thick lines down the street. He stared into the distance and said softly, "I used to think you were the lucky one." "Lucky?" I asked. "Yes, lucky because Mom always turned to you when she needed help. Lucky because you always knew what to do. Lucky because people respected you." I shook my head slowly. "David, it wasn't luck. It was just different responsibilities. You had your own strengths, I had mine." He smiled sadly. "I saw your strengths as competition, and I saw your silence as distance," I admitted. He turned to me, eyebrows raised. "Distance?" "Yes, I always thought you didn't want to be close." He let out a soft laugh. "No, I did. I just didn't know how to meet you where you were." The rain quieted for a moment, falling softer, almost like a whisper. I think we spent too many years misunderstanding each other, I said. Maybe this, he replied, motioning to the house, the rain, and the quiet evening, is our chance to start new. I nodded. Maybe it is. A soft shift towards healing. That night when he left, I walked him to the door. It felt natural, like something we should have been doing all along. See you tomorrow? He asked. Yes, I said. He paused, then added, Thank you for giving me space to fix this. I gave him a small smile. Thank you for taking the step.
The days that followed felt softer than the ones before. Nothing dramatic happened, no sudden breakthroughs, no big apologies or grand gestures. Just slow, steady steps towards something that felt like peace. Sometimes, the most meaningful healing doesn't come from big moments. It comes from quiet mornings, shared tasks, small conversations that finally begin to fill the silence that had been growing for years. David and I found ourselves doing things together without even planning them. One day, he arrived early with breakfast in a small paper bag. Thought you might need this, he said, handing it to me. Thanks, I replied. We ate in the kitchen, not saying much, but somehow it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt familiar, like something we used to do long ago, before responsibilities and misunderstandings built walls between us. Finding Mom in the little things. We continued sorting through Mom's belongings room by room. Some items were easy to place aside, old receipts, notebooks, worn-out scarves. Others stopped us in our tracks. Like the small wooden jewelry box she kept by her bedside. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't expensive, but it meant something to her. David opened it slowly, as if afraid it might break. Inside were 3 items. A faded photograph of us as children, a small silver ring she wore every day, and a folded note. David handed me the note. You read it, he said softly. I opened it carefully. Her handwriting was thin and slanted, aged but steady. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. My sons, please remember, love isn't about agreeing. It's about returning. David swallowed hard. Mom always knew how to say things. I nodded. She knew our weaknesses and our strengths. He exhaled shakily. She always believed we would come back to each other. We are, I whispered. That moment didn't fix everything, but it put a small piece of our broken understanding back in place.
After the attic day, something shifted quietly but profoundly between David and me. It wasn't immediate forgiveness, it wasn't a sudden bond restored, but it was honest. And that honesty laid the foundation for real healing. We began approaching the task that had caused so much tension before, sorting property documents, organizing Dad's files, reviewing Mom's notes. But now there was a rhythm, a shared understanding. When one of us felt overwhelmed, the other would step in, not as a boss, but as a partner. One morning, while going through old family albums, I noticed David lingered on a photo I hadn't seen him look at before. It was from a summer vacation, decades ago. The three of us were on a small hill, laughing as the wind whipped our hair. Mom's smile was radiant. She held my hand and David's hand firmly, anchoring both of us in that moment. David's voice was soft. I miss that. Just us. I nodded, feeling the same ache. Me too. For a moment, we simply sat there, letting the past wash over us. The arguments, the misunderstandings, the harsh words, they felt smaller now, insignificant against the weight of love and memories. A step toward true understanding. Later, we tackled the final pieces of the inheritance, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to share with distant relatives. In every decision, we discussed openly, weighing fairness, respect, and the values Mom had instilled in us. It was not always easy. There were disagreements. There were moments when old fears crept back, tempting us to defend ourselves instead of compromise. But every time that happened, we remembered the attic, the letters, the locket. We remembered the truth we had spoken. We were not rivals. We were brothers. One afternoon, while sorting through old letters, I found a note from Dad, tucked inside a book he had left behind. His handwriting was familiar, a little shaky with age. I hope my sons find each other, even when life pulls them apart. Money and property can fade, but love and trust must remain. I showed it to David. He read it silently, his eyes misting. He didn't speak at first, just let the words settle. Then he whispered, "We've been blind, but maybe we're seeing now." I reached out and squeezed his hand. Yes, we are. Small moments that heal. The next days passed with quiet, meaningful gestures. David and I would make coffee together in the mornings, sit in the living room, sometimes without words, just enjoying the shared space. Sometimes we laughed at childhood memories. Sometimes we paused, letting old grief linger but not dominate. One rainy evening, we lit a few candles in the house, sitting at the dining table. The soft glow illuminated our faces and the photographs of Mom and Dad on the walls. We shared stories neither of us had told before. Small secrets, embarrassing moments, moments that felt trivial at the time but were now treasures. David admitted, quietly, I was scared I'd lose you, that I'd lose Mom, that everything I loved would slip through my fingers. I nodded, understanding. I felt the same. And I know now, holding on to anger doesn't protect anything. It only separates us. He looked at me for a long moment. I'm sorry. For all of it.
Weeks passed, and the tension that had haunted the house slowly melted into quiet routines. David and I weren't perfect, and some old habits lingered, but they no longer defined us. Instead, what defined us was a new understanding that family is about presence, trust, and forgiveness more than possessions or pride. One morning, I woke up to the soft patter of rain against the window. I walked to the kitchen and found David already making tea, humming quietly to himself. The sight made me pause and smile. It was such a small thing, tea, but it carried a weight I hadn't realized I was missing. Presence, normalcy, connection. I joined him at the counter. "Good morning," I said. "Morning," he replied.
eyes crinkling in a small, genuine smile. We didn't need to speak about the past. The shared look, the quiet togetherness said it all. The lessons of grief and forgiveness. Looking back, I understand now that grief does strange things to people. It magnifies fears, it twists intentions, and it can make even the closest bonds feel fragile. David and I let that happen. We let misunderstanding and pride build walls between us. But in those walls, there was also an opportunity to recognize our fears, face them, and choose love over anger. It took time, patience, and humility. It took courage to speak honestly and listen without judgment. And it took forgiveness, first for each other and then quietly for ourselves. The true inheritance Dad left behind was never about money or property. It was about trust, values, and the strength to carry on as a family. Through this journey, I realized that what really matters is not what you inherit, but who you have by your side. And for me, that meant my brother, David, my lifelong companion through childhood memories, shared struggles, and now reconciliation. We began sharing decisions, responsibilities, and even small daily tasks, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. The house no longer felt heavy. The rooms no longer echoed with arguments or tension. They felt alive, with presence, with laughter, with understanding. A moment of quiet reflection. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, I stood on the porch with David. The sky was painted in soft oranges and purples, the air cool and gentle. "I'm glad we fixed this," David said quietly. "Me too," I replied. He hesitated, then added, "I don't want to waste time being afraid or angry again. Life's too short." I nodded. We can't change the past, but we can shape the future, together. And as I looked at him, I realized something important. The inheritance wasn't mine alone, nor his. It belonged to both of us. It belonged to the bond we were choosing to rebuild, stronger now, tempered by understanding, honesty, and love. Closing thoughts. If there's one thing I've learned through this experience, it's that family is never about possessions or fairness alone. It's about showing up. It's about forgiving. It's about listening when words are hard to find. And it's about choosing connection even when it feels impossible. Life is short and grudges are heavy. But reconciliation, however quiet and gradual, brings a lightness that no inheritance ever could. David and I still have moments of tension, as all siblings do, but they no longer define us. The memories of fights and misunderstandings remain, but they are now part of the story, not the story itself. We have learned to be patient, to communicate, and to honor the trust our parents left behind. And most importantly, we have learned that the real inheritance is not money or land, but the love, respect, and presence of each other. I often think about Mom, smiling at her wisdom, and in those moments, I feel grateful, not for what we have, but for what we've become, brothers again, walking forward together, stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. The end.